Times, citing sources in the administration of the current US president, reports that Joseph Biden has finally allowed Ukraine to use long-range ATACMS missiles for strikes on the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation. The weapon is likely to be used for strikes on the territory of the Kursk region against the positions of Russian and North Korean troops who are currently trying to push the armed forces of Ukraine out of this Russian region. The New York Times describes President Biden's decision as a significant shift in US policy. The search for a solution has divided the advisors of the current American president, and it is being made literally 2 months before a new occupant, Republican Donald Trump, arrives in the White House. Immediately after the New York Times reported on Biden's decision, there were also reports in French media that the United Kingdom and France had allowed Ukraine to use its own long-range missiles for strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation. Earlier, there were reports that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, and the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, are planning to convince the current US president to grant Ukraine such permission. As is known, the discussion about the necessity of allowing Ukraine to use Western-made long-range weapons for strikes on the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation has been ongoing for several months. This is me. The desire of Ukraine was discussed between the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy. Subsequently, the heads of foreign affairs ministries held relevant negotiations with the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, discussed the necessity of issuing such permission in Washington. During his negotiations with President Biden and later with the American president, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke on this topic. However, each time the administration apparently did not make a decision. Its representatives emphasized that even if a decision is made, it will not be announced officially. And now the White House is also not commenting on reports in the New York Times. So, if Ukraine is indeed able to use American long-range weapons to strike at the positions of Russian and North Korean troops, we will find out about it, post-fact. Ultimately, this situation could indeed change the entire course of hostilities, to some extent reducing the arsenals of the Russian Federation that it is currently using in its offensive against Ukrainian positions. This also paradoxically supports the position of the new American President Donald Trump if he indeed decides to start consultations with the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, regarding the end of the Russian-Ukrainian war, which Trump repeatedly promised, both during his election campaign and after he was elected President of the USA. It is absolutely clear. This became clear once again after the phone conversation between German Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz and President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin that the Russian leader understands only the language of strength. And if he agrees to freeze the Russian-Ukrainian war, it will be because he realizes the danger that has arisen, if not for his economy, then for his troops. In the event that Ukraine will more intensively use modern Western weapons to destroy Russian military forces and arsenals of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on its own sovereign territory. This also creates a completely different situation regarding potential negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv if they are initiated by Donald Trump. Because in this situation, Moscow will have to think about what to do with the presence of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kursk region, and how to separate this presence from the presence of Russian troops in the occupied territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia regions of Ukraine, as well as Crimea and Sevastopol, which, as is known, from the perspective of Vladimir Putin and his parliament, is the territory of the Russian Federation itself. How to demand that Ukrainian troops leave the territory of the Kursk region as if it is all one Russia, and to lead negotiations about the fact that Ukrainian troops can maintain their positions in the territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia, as if this pseudo-Russia is different from the territory that is considered internationally recognized as the territory of the Russian Federation. That is, for Putin, a rather complicated situation may indeed be created, and after this message from Western publications, several additional questions arise that we need to get answers to in the coming days or weeks. First was the issue of granting Ukraine permission to use American long-range weapons coordinated with the newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump and his representatives. As is known, there is a tradition in America whereby the administration that is handing over affairs to its successors informs them about important principled decisions that will signal their own policies. However, the situation in the U.S. is not such that we can speak about any real traditions that may be preserved in the relationships between Joseph Biden's team and Donald Trump's team. The second question is also very important. When will Ukraine use Western long-range weapons to strike at the positions of the Russian armed forces? And where exactly will this take place? Indeed, on the territory of the Kursk region of the Russian Federation, or in other areas from which Russian troops are advancing on Ukrainian positions. Forces on the territory of Ukraine itself, to slow down Russian offensives, to demonstrate to Vladimir Putin and his generals that their military plans will not come to fruition, at least not at the speed that Vladimir Putin expects, before the possible January talks with the new American President Donald Trump. The third question is how exactly Russia will respond to the strikes. With long-range American, French, or British weapons on its sovereign territory, will it really consider the USA, Great Britain, and France as participants in the Russian-Ukrainian war in this situation, which would require Russia to take some extraordinary actions to demonstrate that it is not just declaring Western countries as participants in its war against Ukraine, but is also ready to strike at their own positions, imagining this in a few weeks? Before the change of power in Washington, it is difficult, but what else can we expect from Vladimir Putin when the Russian president has already made quite a few unpredictable moves? In this situation, it will also be important whether any new sensational decisions will be made by the White House before Joseph Biden hands over presidential powers to Donald Trump. After all, as we can see, surprises are possible. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow me on my social media, on Patreon, buy me a coffee, and Donald, which helped develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature on YouTube itself. Victory and peace. Good luck.